chapter 9, we find that the beginning part is all the prayer of Daniel that Daniel was making to God. And we find that it applies to us also, because we are in the same situation as the Israelites are. We have been lost in sin and darkness of Satan and trapped by the slavery to Satan, and we had no way of escape. But God is so great in mercy that He waited for us to come back to Him. He was longing to bless us. He is longing to save sinners and bring them into His fold. And this Daniel knew, and so he was pleading for his people, the Israelites. So in Daniel chapter 9 and verse 6, we find that Daniel is telling God, and he's realizing that God had sent many prophets to speak to His people, and their messages were totally ignored by the people. The prophets, many of them, were persecuted and killed and stoned to death. And the people, because the people found the truth very difficult and painful to bear in their hearts. So even today, God speaks clearly through the Bible to us. As we read the Bible, we come to know God's mind and His will towards our lives. He also speaks to us through the preachers, through the teachers. He speaks to us through friends and even through circumstances. We should be sensitive to God speaking to us. And sometimes, and most of the time I should say, we find that the truth hurts us. We don't like to listen to the truth. We would rather like to listen to soothing words. Even if they are false, we prefer to hear soothing words. Sometimes we do not want to make painful changes in our lives which are required for us to follow Christ. Like He says, if you want to follow me, take up your cross and follow me. Whatever painful situation you have, you take up your cross and follow me. So we reject the message that Christ is giving us. So we should learn not to listen to soothing lies and false things just to please people. Say to please us. We should have discernment to know between the truth and between the lies. If we follow the false words and soothing words of our friends, of people, then it will bring God's judgment upon us. So let us accept the truth, even if it hurts us, because only the truth can help us. Now coming to Daniel chapter 9, verses 11 to 13. As he's praying, Daniel mentions to God the curses outlined in Deuteronomy chapter 28. God had given His people, the Israelites, a choice. He had told them that if they obeyed God, they would get blessings. They would be first and not last. They'd be blessed in the city and the country. They'd be the head and not the tail. Their families would prosper, their business would prosper, and they would lead a beautiful, God-fulfilling life filled with blessings of God. But if they disobeyed God, then Deuteronomy 28 is filled with curses that would come upon the people. And these curses were meant not just to hurt the people, but to open their eyes and turn them towards God. What do you do when you face difficult circumstances like bad health, relationship problems, financial difficulties, failure in marriage, rejection, and such things? What should we do? We should examine our lives, examine ourselves, and ask God where we have gone astray. We should ask and examine ourselves and see why these curses have come upon us. And we should humble ourselves before God and ask God what He wants us to do in the situation that is against us. And we should earnestly seek God's forgiveness, and we must ask God's help to overcome all these difficulties, so that the curses upon us will be a stepping stone for our learning, so that we can climb upwards towards God and glorify Him. That is what Daniel was talking. Excuse me. Then in Daniel chapter 9, verse 14, Daniel spoke to God and told him how continually God tried to bring Israel back to Himself. Yet even after disaster struck them, they refused to obey God. Even after Jerusalem was destroyed, the Israelites refused to obey God. And even in our lives, God uses circumstances, other people, and also His word to bring and break His people. So what will it take for God to get your attention? God wants your attention. He wants my attention. So does He need to put calamity and bad things upon us to get our attention? Because when people are in trouble, it's only then that they cry out to God and ask Him for favors, ask Him to forgive them. So it would be a mistake to read the Bible as a dry history. You know, there are books in 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, books of Chronicles, which are history of the kings. But that is not just dry history. If we think of it as dry history, we will miss out on God. It is history of the people which have gone before us to teach us how to live a righteous life, to show us what happens when we disobey God and how blessings and prosperity come upon us when we obey God. So the Bible is a book of learning, and we should be very careful to learn what it teaches us.